If someone walked in this room right now and handed you $63 million, how would you spend it? What would be your very first purchase? And actually, I'd love to hear it. So we're going to try something out. On the count of three, I want you to shout out your very first purchase, your very first thing that you would buy with your newfound $63 million. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Heard some good ones. I heard house, I think car, I heard travel. I think somebody said eggs, which is wild because if you get $63 million, that's your first thing that you want to do, be able to afford a dozen of eggs in America. That's kind of wild, right? But that's a TEDx for another day. So for me, disclaimer, I don't actually have $63 million. Sorry about that. However, I'm working on it. I have about $63 to my name, so we're getting there. But see, this isn't about me having $63 million. This is actually a representation of the largest gift that Morgan State University has received from philanthropist Mackenzie Scott. Anybody familiar? So actually, quick round of applause for Mackenzie Scott. I think that she absolutely deserves her flowers. $63 million is life-changing to this campus and to the future of our students. And she didn't just stop there. She went on and proceeded to give over $1 billion of her wealth over the past few years to HBCUs. This will change the lives of students, campus, the community. I mean, it's truly dynamic. And so I've been sitting around and I've been thinking about this $63 million. Not that I'm getting a piece of the pie, unfortunately, but because I love Morgan State and I love our HBCUs. Morgan State University made me who I am today. I was just a young kid from Prince George's County. Anyone from PG? Come on, shout out to PG. Just a young kid from PG, so as you can imagine, Baltimore, only about an hour away, was a culture shock to me. But I grew to love the city, all the oohs, the avenues, the hot dogs, I loved it. I grew to love it. It was very different, but I grew to love the city. And Morgan State made me who I am today. I studied engineering. I had a love and a passion for technology. I came here and studied engineering, and then I came back for my MBA because I knew that if I'm able to combine my technical acumen with business acumen, then I'd be a dangerous person in the business world. And so I looked up to people like Reginald F. Lewis, Baltimore native, right? The first black man, first black American in general to be able to amass a billion-dollar company through an overseas leveraged buyout. Amazing. Reginald F. Lewis, one of my major inspirations in this space. And so I've been thinking about this $63 million. Why is this so important to me? Why is it so important? Because I just want to see the future of our university and our community excel because I love our HBCUs. And it would be a shame if we came back 5 to 10 years later and we didn't see a significant shift. Maybe we just saw a few new buildings on campus, maybe an upgraded lunch plan. But I want to see some real infrastructure shifts. And so that's what I've been thinking about for the $63 million. So for those who don't know, even after I graduated with my engineering degree and then I pursued my MBA, I created my own company. And so we've gone across the nation to various HBCUs hosting on-campus pitch competitions, entrepreneurship workshops, HBCU conferences, you name it. And so as I went to so many different universities, I saw that all of them had amazing engineering programs. They had amazing law programs, amazing medical programs. But one area that I realized that we often miss the mark in is entrepreneurship programs. We often miss the mark in entrepreneurship programs. There's actually a study from national think tank by the name of Third Way that said that only about 6% of HBCUs have internal infrastructure to support seed funding for student entrepreneurs. That's a pretty bad statistic. That means out of 100 plus universities, only 6 universities have internal infrastructure to provide funding for student entrepreneurs. Why is this a problem? Because we see a drastic shift in entrepreneurship right now. Why? Because, of course, our parents told us, go to college, get that good government job, right? Get that good, safe, high-paying tech job. But over the past few years, we've seen some pretty serious layoffs in all of these industries, right? And so there's no longer quite that safe bet. That appetite for risk has changed amongst students. Also, the power of AI, how rapidly it's moving. Students are able to create apps through vibe coding in a matter of hours, in a matter of days, which often may have taken them months or years previously. So AI is moving so rapidly that so many students are becoming even more of an entrepreneurial spirit on campus. And this doesn't mean that, they're not going to college or, they're not pursuing careers, but they're maybe doing these things on the side. They're a student, they have a business, or an app or whatever it may be on the side. And so for us, it's important to truly cultivate these students in this next wealth generation to help bridge the wealth gap. Why is that? Because if a student has created a brand new app, who's pulling them to the side and saying, hey, how are you protecting your IP? How are you protecting your intellectual property? Who's pulling them to the side and saying, hey, watch out for those predatory VCs who want to soak up equity on your cap table? What's a VC? What in the world is a cap table? These are things that we have to make sure we have programming for, especially on HBCU campuses, to sustain our students, especially those interested in entrepreneurship. So actually, quick show of hands, any entrepreneurs in the building? A lot, we got a lot in here. And so, as you guys know, entrepreneurship is an ugly ride in many cases, right? It's ugly, then it gets pretty, then it gets ugly, and then it gets pretty again, like a roller coaster. And at a point in time, you just learn to scream and enjoy the ride, you know? But there's a lot of beauty in it. There's a lot of wealth generation in it. There's a lot of inspiration and community impact in it. And so that's why we really have to empower our students. And entrepreneurship is that one mark where HBCUs sometimes miss that mark. And so, thinking about that $63 million and that billion plus large scale across HBCUs, we can really move that needle with this amount of funding. And so I have three main models that I'd like to see across HBCU campuses to support and sustain the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I'll tell you guys about those soon. But when I think about entrepreneurship, some people may wonder, is there even a demand? Why would we put funding toward these programs? How many students are entrepreneurs? There's absolutely a demand. There's absolutely talent. And I've worked with some brilliant HBCU student entrepreneurs. One by the name of Malcolm Lee, Virginia Union graduate. He studied neuroscience. He went on to create a company called Gab Global, VR immersive language learning experience. You go, you put on the VR headset, and it's almost like you're transported into a foreign country, surrounded by their culture, surrounded by an assistance of learning their language. Dynamic technology, I'm telling you. Another HBCU graduate by the name of Jillian Anderson, based in Atlanta, went to Albany State. She did ride sharing, drove for ride sharing for years. As she was doing ride sharing, she would speak to her customers, casual conversation. And many of them were so relieved that a woman driver picked them up, especially for a late night drive. It just gave them a greater sense of comfort. What did Jillian do? She went and founded Her Ride, based in Atlanta, a ride-sharing company for women by women. Dynamic. Very small team. She's doing an amazing thing. She's right up in Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, right on the signs with all the other big ride-sharing companies. It's beautiful. When we talk about Black history, let's think about Black future too, right? Who's next up? Who's next in line? Another dynamic HBCU graduate, Morgan State grad, Aaliyah Clinton. She studied chemistry here at Morgan State University. She got into the chemistry space and saw that there was a lack of representation. Now, what did she go on and do? She created Monet's Engineered Materials, custom lab coats, fashionable but enhanced safety technology, dynamic. She's doing an amazing job. She's raised maybe almost over 6 figures just off of pitch competitions. But this is what we can do when we have sustained entrepreneurial ecosystems. Why? Because little Black boys and little Black girls deserve to feel and experience what an IPO is, feel and experience what having equity is, feel and experience what an acquisition is, and to be able to generate this wealth to support and sustain their communities and their families. We often talk a lot about this thing called generational wealth, but what's really moving the needle? And I know that entrepreneurial ecosystems can truly do that. And so I have 3 main models that I would love to see across HBCU campuses with this dynamic gift of $63 million that was provided by Mackenzie Scott. And it wouldn't be how you would spend the entire $63 million. Of course, we want to go towards scholarships and new buildings and things of that nature. This would maybe be just a fifth of the $63 million. And you may not be familiar with these models, but I'll be sure to break them down. One is called the Venture Studio model. Instead of a one-off pitch competition, a one-off grant, where they just say, hey, take this money and figure it out, you're literally coaching the student from A to B, from innovation to production to launch to ensure their success. And so it's not holding their hand, it's not coddling them, it's ensuring that this investment is fruitful and this is a successful ROI. And so when we think about the Venture Studio model, just to further break it down a bit more, what they do is the university provides the team, the tech team, the legal team, and everything, all the ins and outs from front to back to ensure the success of the student entrepreneur. And this is not a brand new concept. We see universities like MIT doing this already, Stanford doing this for years, but we don't quite see this heavily amongst our HBCUs, unfortunately. And this is something that I would love to see widespread, the venture studio model. To further break this down a bit more, it's almost like instead of giving a man a fish or teaching a man how to fish, you're giving a man the entire boat, all the gear he needs, the hook, the reel, all the worms. You know, you're giving him the best spot to fish in and also teaching him how to fish. In general, that's the venture studio model, would be extremely successful, widespread across HBCU campuses. The next model that I have in mind that I'd love to see across HBCU campuses is a student-led venture fund. A lot of people may not even know what VC is. I didn't know until I came back to Morgan for my MBA. And so I didn't really know much about the investment space. So this would help student entrepreneurs and student potential investors to learn more about investing in the venture space and to be able to actually invest in their peers. Those who are building in the venture studio, they'll actually be able to practice this investment experience to be able to have true success in this space. Why is this important? Because a marketing research company by the name of Axios had realized about 7 years ago that almost 40% of venture capitalists and investors come from two universities, Harvard and Stanford. It's actually really wild. An entire industry is literally consisting of two universities. So imagine the biases that creates. The biases in who gets hired. The biases in what companies get funded. Perhaps they're not looking at Baltimore-based companies. They're solely looking at Silicon Valley due to proximity. And so this is why we often see a significant wealth gap, because of this disparity in representation, especially in the venture and investment space. So not just who's creating, but who's investing, who's funding it. We can have hundreds of thousands of black entrepreneurs. Where are the black investors? And there absolutely are some out here that inspire everything that we do. But we definitely need to see more, and a venture-led student fund would invoke that interest, provide that expertise, provide that support, and catapult to see more black VCs, more angel investors, and so forth. So those are the first two, venture studio model, student-led investment fund, venture fund. Lastly, the third model that I would love to see across HBCU campuses with the newly received $63 million would be an advanced research studio. This is very important for Morgan as we are aiming toward R1 status. So for those who don't know, that's a very prestigious status that pretty much indicates that this university has a high activity level of research. And so this would be a dynamic win for Morgan State. And so when we think about an advanced research studio, things like this already exist on campus, of course, but it would be excelled to where our tech transfer offices are more efficient and more robust to help support students who are doing research and being able to get equity or commercialization in that research. There are so many students who spend years and years and years on research, and then when it's all said and done, their name is barely even mentioned. So ensuring that they can truly get what they deserve, whether it's equity, whether it's funding through an acquisition of the brilliance they're working on. Prime example, when in thinking of research, Morgan State is working with BWI Airport for autonomous wheelchairs, so driverless wheelchairs to help folks navigate the airport. Amazing technology. And so if we could see something like this commercialized to where the staff and the students that work on this can get equity or funding through this, that would be dynamic. Imagine what they can do for their families and their communities. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so this is also near and dear to my heart. My mother has a beautiful custom gift basket business, some of the best gift baskets you'll ever see in your life. My father owned a tow trucking company for years. My aunts, my uncles, they've had clothing lines. They've had power wash companies. And so I come from a family of entrepreneurs. When I was in middle school, I was in the Young Entrepreneurs Program. And so it's embedded in us, not necessarily just out of a hobby or a passion, but sometimes out of survival. And some people know what I mean. Sometimes you just have to have another grind to make sure that you can make ends meet. And so I come from a family of entrepreneurs. But one area that we often miss the mark at is how can I transform this small business into a scaled business, to where this business now has multiple employees, has multiple flagship locations, and now can generate actual true growth for the family, can actually generate, equity or an acquisition or whatever it may be. And so that's often sometimes where our communities may miss the mark, how to truly go from a small business into a scaled business. And so that's why I believe that these three models can be extremely significant for our community: the venture studio model, the student-led investment or venture fund, and then lastly, the advanced research studio. And so when I think about these things, it makes me think about my daughters. I have two beautiful daughters, JoJo and Cam. One is 2 years old, one is almost 2 months old. So I'm kind of going through it, but I love them. I love them to death. I love them to death. And so I have, just different Morgan gear around the house. And so as they get older, they may decide that they want to attend Morgan State University, the national treasure. And so I want them to be able to have 10 times the resources I had. I had a lot of amazing resources here, but I want them to have 10 times the resources. So if they want to go and be a student entrepreneur or a researcher, whatever it may be, there's no limitation. There's no limitation to that. And so I leave you with this last thought. Imagine a future where instead of college students graduating with debt, they graduated with equity. Equity in the startups that their peers have created alongside themselves, equity through student-led venture funds and investment, equity in the research that they spent years and years and years of their life working on. And so I leave you with this last thought. How would you spend $63 million? Thank you.